yeah, there've been issues. Some of this is, a little bit reminiscent to, remember early Shadowlands? There were so many nerfs. But yeah, once again...
I'd rather not, to be honest with
you. Yeah, true.
I'd rather not.
Once again, we are seeing lots of nerfs and a large disparity in dungeon difficulty. So if you take a look here, right, for a plus 24, 1 before the group, there's been 1 plus 2 run in this sample. 3 plus 1.
Oh, Jesus.
And you can see no other dungeon is completed at 24 or plus 2 on a 23.
Easy.
And then there are some dungeons which are just, way harder than others.
Yeah.
Right? So it's, fairly interesting. Look at that, Court of Stars. Certainly one of the more completables if you sort of take a look at these numbers. This is data gathered Monday, the 2nd of January, 2023. So when we look at this, we see that Court of Stars and Burial Grounds are the dungeons that people essentially can do the most. So, Court of Stars, it did get plus 1 to, at a 24 key. But we look at everything else, and we see that of the 73 keys that were timed at, plus 23, 36 were Shadow and Burial Grounds, 23 were Court of Stars.
Yep. So, do you want to hear this in very quick soundbite? World of Warcraft is suffering from profound levels of mechanical complexity creep. There you go.
Yes.
There you go. That's
done.
It. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing up. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. No, it's a bit different because, obviously, temples there's the harder, or substantially harder than the SBG and Court of Stars, and the Halls of Valor as well. Halls of Valor was notoriously, if I remember, from my time in Legion, not from what people remember it as. I remember Halls of Valor being particularly hard comparatively to a lot of... Maybe that's just because... Maybe that's not a universal experience.
It would mostly just be Harsha that would get people, right?
Yeah, I remember it being one of the more annoying ones overall. And they were difficult, but I wasn't big pushing keys. I was doing my 15, 16 every week. Just fucking more than 2 now. But it's mostly the new ones, as Ned Starker points out. It is mostly the new ones that are a problem, and you can immediately see why if you play any of them. They're harder. There's more shit to do. There's more shit to worry about. And you can see where Temple got updated. They updated it and made it hard as hell. Which is a weird thing. Because there's two kind of problems that are interacting here. And I think Temple is on one side, an extreme, and then Knockhood and Azure Vaults, and especially Ruby on the other side, where Ruby's mechanically complex. There's loads of shit happening all the time, and if you don't kick things, you're just exploded. Okay, sure, whatever. And if you step into the pool, you're 40 million whelps are there and you're dead. A Temple of the Jade Serpent, if I could speak, is just the Panda Woman's going to kill you. There you go. There is very little to worry about here. There's very little mechanical complexity. You just kick some stuff, stun some stuff, easy. But if you make one mistake, you're dead. So it's both spectrums of the difficulty is wrong, where it's not complex but hyper punishing, and it's too complex and also hyper punishing at the same time.
And the differences will be exacerbated by the increase in scaling beyond plus 10.
Yep.
They scale by 2% more health and damage per level, which does mean that by the time you are getting up to a plus 20, plus 22, 23, any differences between them are being magnified because of how, the sort of scaling up percentages end up shaking out. So,
and I think,
it doesn't impact, most of what we've been doing.
Yeah, it's I've basically done very little M+ so far, just because I've been doing all the things, I've been busy, and also not playing the games because I was away. But, this is... From what I've played, I really enjoy most of the dungeons. Sometimes they go a wee bit too much, and I hate the Azure Vault just because all we have is Azure Vault keys. For some reason, our guild only gets Vault keys, and we do it over and over again. But I think they're really fun. It's just, I assume that opinion will fall apart once the difficulty gets frustratingly high.
Yes, and I think that's the problem. That's the thing. I would contend that, and I know that this is not the opinion of many of the very high-end M+ players, I just don't think that Fortified is that fun. If it is a dungeon where every bit of trash is a thing, because
pacing's wrong.
Yeah, because
Pacing's wrong.
pacing-wise, there's a reason why you have...
Trash boss, trash boss, trash
Yeah.
boss. It's almost as if they're called trash for a reason, almost.
Yeah, and then I think you have this weird thing where if you put more complexity onto the trash, you make the trash, harder in your general design. Then you have an affix that makes the trash more important than the bosses. For a lot of players, that is just not going to be... Like, for the people who, apply a speedrunning like ethos, by which I mean maximally using all of their stuff to get the best, to push a key, get the best time they can, that's all fine because it's a new fun challenge. And those are people that kind of like playing at, peak engagement all the time.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, as you said, there's a reason why you've got trash boss.
Yeah.
And when we kind of like flip that on its head, it just doesn't... I just don't think it's as much fun.
So I think it would be good. It just needs, I think, the ratio changed, where I think there's too much trash between bosses. And this is a problem because you don't want to design like 8 bosses to have the same length of dungeon. Because you would need, if there's too much trash, you need to reduce trash. So you just trash, dungeon's too short. You need more bosses. Shit. So you can't really do that. That's asking a lot, and that would basically mean you'd have less dungeons because of design resources. But it is a thing where Fortified tilts it, so it's like 80% go, 20% rest. Not the bosses, especially this is where it goes wrong at higher levels, people, where it's not resting anymore because the skilling's so high, you need to care about bosses as well. But I guess it's like the 80-20 or like 60-40 or something. The 60 rest, 40 go feels good for people largely. And that's traditionally where a lot of it is there's a whole thing about like how you design a difficulty like curve and stuff during a gameplay experience, and you generally want it to like go up and then spike, and then people can match it and like hit spike and then feel good, and then you want the difficulty to drop back down so they feel good for a bit, and then they raise the challenge again to hit them. There's all these different things about pacing difficulty, but I guess the problem is if you try to get the difficulties all over the place because you're making 2 dungeons, but you're making 1 dungeon. So you design 1 dungeon really well, but then it's 2 dungeons because it's reversed in difficulty design based on Fortified and Tyrannical, and that's where like, yeah, unless you remove half the trash on Fortified week, which would be insane, that might solve it. But it's a bit awkward, and that gets into very like specific kind of problem solving. That's weird, but it's annoying because like I think the dungeons are generally great. Honestly, I need to actually play the game properly and do them at like 20 to see how they feel at that like major edge. But man,
I think there's just a very simple thing. There's cracks in everything. There's imperfections in everything. And if you have a ramping up scaling difficulty, then as it gets harder and harder and harder, the cracks in your design will just be magnified more and more and more to the point where it will cause more frustration. Now, in light of all of this, we do have hotfixes made from January 3rd to 6th. I mean, here's a big one for the Overgrown Ancient. They've increased the amount of time in between abilities, particularly with Burst Forth. So I saw a fun screenshot of a group that had like 200 odd deaths. They'd been in that dungeon for 2 hours trying to push the key, and they just could not kill the Ancient.
very good.
Fun. They've increased the time it takes for Zerblade to drain their mana, for Knockhood on the Tempest. The Lightning Strike damage reduced by 10%, but more importantly, Energy Surge reduced by 50%.
That's a hard boss, like.
Yeah, the Lance Masters are... Oh yes, they're less talkative firing the Ballista. That's good.
Let fly!
Ruby Life Pulse. Fun place. I think one of the larger... Because it's had a few rounds of nerfs. Yeah. But reduce the absorb of the Ice Bulwark.
It's Sepulchre 2, Dungeon Edition.
Reduce party-wide periodic damage from Chillstorm. Also Shaved Out. The recast cooldown of Touch of Nothingness has been increased.
Yeah, that's way too crazy, that speed, like.
And Weatherwill now prefers targets that are not under the effect of that spell. So, you can see plenty of things. Thundering, updated visual, and it will no longer interrupt eating and drinking.
Nice.
I expect, though, that I expect these are not going to be really far enough. and that
Yeah, there's not that many like trash nerfs there.
yeah, I'm just wondering, do Blizzard go many iterations of smaller change, or do they just kind of hit it with the hammer? I'm almost
They're going to
thinking
go,
hit it with the hammer is probably the move to make.
Uh,
If people are having the problem now and they're not going to have the patience to wait for like 6 weeks of incremental changes.
okay, I'm not saying this is right. I'm saying this is what I think Blizzard will do. I think, and I'll explain the rationale. I think they will go for very small iterative changes down because they don't want to overdo it. And also, this shit scales up to 20 for loot. That's the upper end.
Yeah.
So obviously that's not many people clearing it, but it is clearable. It is clearable by, you know, couple hundred thousand, like couple hundred or 1,000 and so for like people. So
And
with
them, is
people,
that comparable enough to the amount of people who've done a mythic raid?
Yep. That's what I imagine. I imagine it's more or less that where you're not supposed to be able to do these right away. You're supposed to be able to do these after you've had a good couple weeks of vault gear. You've had your tier. You've got your creation catalyst. So you've got your full tier set at a decent level. You've got your Valor cap up. You've got the upgrade. So they don't want people to like just blast up and be like, oh, we're done. Because people complain about, oh, we can't do like 22s or like 12 people have done 20s. Okay, we can't do 24s. It's like 24s is insane. Now Blizzard maybe intentionally designed a lot of these with more hard gear barriers. Obviously there's a discrepancy, but to them it might be, oh, Shadow Moon Burial Grounds and Court of Stars are too easy. That might be how they're thinking about this a little bit. But they're obviously seeing feedback and going, okay, well, people are finding this a little bit too hard. Okay, well, we'll tone them down a bit. So I think that's the idea of, I think they intend this is the pacing of completion, I think, largely, where people want to grind through and then they'll grind through it and feel better for having ground through it. I think is maybe their intention, because the last thing you want to do is cut your season in half, because this is going to be a long enough season. Like, it's not going to be like a shorter one. It's going to be there's a couple more months left of playing this game. And that's where I would obviously say let them finish the game and then play it again.
Yes.
Give them the equivalent of the New Game Plus experience when they do it on their class or whatever. But I guess they want to try it this way. I think that's probably what they'll do and why. As to whether it's right, maybe they need to be more aggressive just to appear like they're on top of things and to give people a good, happy feeling. But it is, I think they're kind of being conservative, going, well, how hard can we make our game to get people to stay and enjoy the experience?
Maybe playing around with some of the the penalties to not timing could be something to play around with.
They need to remove key depletion.
Yeah.
They need to remove key depletion, because if you can choose to do that, you shouldn't, like, name me one other like multiplayer video game where failure sets you back, like, at all, outside of like a PvP game with rating. That's the tier of FF11 removing XP, or EverQuest destroying you, EverQuest showing up and shooting your dog.
Very much not how WoW was designed.
Punishment is not a part of punishment beyond being set back to where you started. It doesn't exist in video games largely, unless they're intentionally like single player crazy, you don't have continues or checkpoints games. Like, it's just not. It's not how games kind of go there. Like,
Yeah,
it's not how it is. So I don't know why it's there.